This meeting is called to order. Good evening. This is the December 9th, 2025 meeting of the Shrewsbury Select Board. We will start by introducing the board and staff members present. I am Teresa Flynn.
Beth Cassavant.
Carlos Garcia.
Oh, sorry.
Greg Richards.
Michelle Conlon.
Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager.
Keith Baldinger, Assistant Town Manager, Operations.
And Juanita Anderson, the assistant to the town manager, is printing some agendas and will be with us shortly. First item on our agenda is to approve the bills, payrolls, and warrants.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Item number 2 is to review and act to approve the minutes of the November 10th, 2025 workshop, November 18th, 2025 meeting, and the December 2nd, 2025 workshop.
Move approval.
Madam Chair, I just had one comment on the November 8th meeting minutes. I'm sorry, November
18th.
18th. Thank you. I just wanted the record to reflect the accurate motions and roll call votes that we took that evening.
Okay.
I don't think that those are reflected in there as they are currently drafted, so I would second that motion contingent upon updates to those.
Okay. We'll ask town staff to review it and ensure accuracy.
With that, I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Item number 3 is announcements and reports. Board members, any announcements or reports this evening? Okay. Item number 4 is the town manager's report. Mr. Mizikar?
Board members, I'm happy to share just a couple grant updates this evening. We were notified earlier this week that we received a $40,000 ADA accessibility grant for improvements at the 1830 Brick Schoolhouse and $78,000 an ADA accessibility grant for the improvements at the senior center, improving sidewalks and accessibility ramps around the building. So in total, we received $118,000, and we'll begin working on that early this summer.
Thank you. Item number 5 is public comment pursuant to Select Board Policy 31. We did receive one request from Julie Boris to speak this evening. Thank you, Ms. Boris. If you don't mind, just stating your name and address for the record.
Sure.
Thank you.
Julie Boris, 6 Catalina Drive. Good evening, everyone. Today I'm asking the Select Board and all of the people of Shrewsbury to take a good hard look at what the Public Health Excellence Grant actually is, not what it's being marketed as. It's not public health excellence, it's public health expansion. This program eliminates local control over public health. Yes, our Board of Health will still exist on paper, but in real authority, it shifts to the new regional bureaucracy run by a regional director, a shared services coordinator, a multi-town advisory board, and the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. Decisions about our own local inspections, enforcement, emergency response, data, nursing priorities will no longer be made here in our community by the people who know our residents. They will be made regionally, ultimately dictated by the state. Local Board of Health only gets one vote in a multi-town system and has no veto power. Second, we're being asked to commit to a 25-year regional structure in exchange for a 2-year grant. Once the original state funding that covers the first 2 years dries up, we're going to be locked into this regional public health department with new staff, new obligations, and new financial responsibilities. We will likely be expected to raise taxes to absorb these costs indefinitely. A 2-year grant in exchange for a 25-year obligation is fiscally irresponsible. And while this may seem like too much money to pass up, I get it, it's a lot of money, it's not worth it. To put it in perspective, for the cost of a single home in Shrewsbury, we would be giving up our rights to self-govern. Third, this program forces us into 4 state-controlled surveillance systems: MAVEN for infectious disease tracking, MIIS for lifelong immunization registry data, metric for inspection and enforcement, and the local public health data solution, a new centralized statewide database that controls everything. These systems don't improve health, they track and trace us. And we didn't agree to that because we were never consulted. After the ridiculous and wholly unscientific public policies that were imposed on us during COVID, why would we ever want to give away more of our local authority to the state? Fourth, under the SAFE law, the vehicle for this public health expansion grant that was rammed through, it allows the DPH commissioner or the commissioner of environmental protection, and I'm kind of I'm cherry picking quotes from the bill, in the event of an outbreak of disease or situation important to the public health, they create the pandemic response. These terms are so broad, they could mean almost anything. Disease, any disease, healthcare situation is undefined. Important to the public health is whatever the commissioner says. And affecting more than one board of health could mean 2 towns or even 2 positive lab results. By opting into this grant with one declaration from the commissioner, local authority is gone. Fifth, once we're in, it's extremely difficult to get out. Withdrawal requires 6 to 12 months notice, votes from both the select board and the Board of Health, and then the Department of Health needs to approve the new governance agreement. This is kind of a one-way door. Once we're in, it's going to be impossible to leave. And what exactly about this grant program is going to improve our community's health? Because from everything I've read, nothing in this program encourages a healthy lifestyle, increase access to healthy food, reduce chronic illness, or give us cleaner water. It tracks, it traces, and it reports to the state. It's a power grab by the same public health agencies that instituted policies like mask mandates for all of us, especially our children, for over 2 years, outside, during sports, mandating 6-foot distancing, arrows in the grocery store, shutting down small businesses and keeping schools and churches closed while exempting the big box stores. That makes no sense. And it imposed one-size-fits-all mandates of liability-free pharmaceutical products on every community while treating natural immunity as if it didn't exist. These were not science-based, they were control-based. And we have not heard one word of accountability. No acknowledgement that these policies harmed people, no reflection on what went wrong, no commitment to doing better next time. Why has there been no public discussion, no public hearing? Why hasn't the community been invited to weigh in on a 25-year commitment? In July, when I came and I spoke and I tried to warn about this, our town manager, Mr. Mizikar, who I met with, he makes a lot of claims about the new SAFE program, which I would just like to briefly address before I close. Local control will continue. Anyone that reads this can see that that is false. Residents will still be able to engage with our town. And while residents can speak at the Board of Health does not need to, nor do they respond to the citizens' concerns. Like they can listen, but they don't have to respond. How is that engagement? He helped to write the statewide public health system and that there was no pharmaceutical influence. While there may have been no pharma reps in the room, once the bills were filed, the pharma-funded NGOs went to work lobbying to get the bills passed. Just one such NGO is the Massachusetts Public Health Alliance. They take money from Big Pharma, including Moderna and AstraZeneca, along with all the big insurance and the big hospitals. He worked directly with the legislatures, that this was locally crafted, this was not outside actors, it was grassroots, not top-down. And according to the Massachusetts Public Health Committee Chair, Marjorie Decker, this new policy was actually based on California regional public health policy, which had the most draconian public health policies during COVID we've ever seen. I think we all saw someone surfing that got arrested while he was out in the middle of the ocean, not near anybody. This is 100% insider policymaking, it's not local input. The legislators are representing Beacon Hill interests, not the grassroots citizens. No boards of health asked for these or drafted these foundational capabilities. No town residents were involved in drafting the SAFE law or voted to join this grant program. No local businesses, parents, seniors, or taxpayers participated. There was zero public input in this public health process. My final point, we are told that the SAFE 2.0 law that implements this grant program was passed unanimously by the legislature. This is completely false, and I know this because I spent more than 2 years opposing it, and I even drafted and filed a bill to amend it so that it would need to go to a 2/3 vote from town meeting to pass. I think that's not too much to ask before we commit to something like this. When the bill did not pass on its own merits in the 2023-2024 session, through the proper legislative channels, it was attached to a 300-page economic development bill that must pass. It's a favorite tactic of Massachusetts legislatures when they want to pass something unpopular. This is exactly the same tactic used to force the hugely unpopular 3A MBTA Communities Act on towns across the Commonwealth. Every grant comes with strings attached. Our town must decide if those strings are worth it. This is not a grant for schools or road extension. This affects all of us. So I urge the board to vote no tonight, to hold a public hearing and put this to a town vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. On a related topic, item number 6 is to review and act on the Central Massachusetts Regional Health Department intermunicipal agreement for the Public Health Excellence Shared Services Grant. We are being asked to approve Shrewsbury's participation in a regional public health collaborative with Grafton and West Boylston, funded by a state grant. And Annette Garcia, our regional public health director, provided a memo to the board and is here this evening to further explain and answer any questions that we have. Thank you, Ms. Garcia, for being here.
Thanks so much. I'll just give a little context and overview. So I'll start first by talking a little bit about the Public Health Excellence Program. So as I'm sure you're all aware, in July of this year, Shrewsbury, Grafton, and West Boylston joined together in a shared service arrangement under the Public Health Excellence Grant Program. This is a state-funded program that's aimed at strengthening public health workforce, meeting established performance standards, expanding capacity, and delivering more equitable public health services. In Massachusetts, there are currently 322 communities participating in this program across 56 different shared service arrangements. To date, we've already seen some increased programming for our communities. We've increased to full weekend coverage to conduct food inspections for temporary events. We've provided after-hour and weekend response to hoarding and other housing concerns for Shrewsbury residents. We've increased our community programming, including attendance at health fairs and participation in educational initiatives. And we've been able to increase cross-departmental collaboration, including a recent public health-led emergency response tabletop exercise that engaged Shrewsbury Police, Fire, schools, libraries, Selco, to talk about responding to extreme heat emergencies here in Shrewsbury. One of our main focuses with this grant is making sure that we're planning for sustainability in the future to ensure that we can continue these excellent public health programs and provisions in town. So to talk a little bit about what the IMA does and specific outlines, I want to talk about the key components. So first, it establishes the structure and governance for the public health shared service arrangement. This is done through an advisory board, which guides our priorities, budgets, policies, and program oversight. Each of the participating Board of Healths will appoint one voting member for their community to sit on the advisory board and an alternative to ensure that all community voices are heard. It also establishes our shared services program and the types of services that we'll offer to our communities. It enables our cross-jurisdictional work by our public health agents, nurses, and other shared staff while maintaining local Board of Health autonomy. It talks about funding and financial protections. So the funding is provided through a multi-year public health excellence grant, which is the current contract goes through fiscal year 27. The IMA does outline that if funding ends, municipalities may decide whether to contribute local funds, but participation is not automatically required. It requires action by each participating municipality. The IMA also outlines clear guidelines for adding communities, withdrawing from the agreement, and terminating your participation. Those are the main components, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
Yes,
Oh,
I have
okay.
questions. A couple questions. Just first question is like, what would you say the critical public health functions that Shrewsbury is unable to deliver today without the grant?
So without the grant, we wouldn't have enough inspectional capacity. Currently, the grant is funding one of our health inspectors, and without 2 full-time health inspectors, we would not be able to meet the minimum requirements for food, housing, camp, and other inspection types. Additionally, we would not be able to provide outreach and education activities that will be largely led by shared services staff that are funded through this grant. This includes things like participating in events with the schools to talk about what the top health priorities are for those communities and developing education and intervention activities. We wouldn't have the opportunity to engage in emergency preparedness and planning like the tabletop exercise that was conducted due to limitations on staff capacity.
And then a follow-up, maybe this is for Mr. Mizikar. I guess, can you help me understand the timing of this? Because we're approving something today, but you signed and the funding is already being spent back in June. How does that work?
So the state gives us a 6-month window to adopt the intermunicipal agreement without harm. So if the agreement were not adopted and ratified, we wouldn't have to give back the funds that we've expended so far, and we wouldn't move forward.
Okay.
But it did, the compliance window and the grant availability hit in July.
Okay.
A question, I think it might be more for, I don't know, whichever one of you. What difference will residents notice with this structure as opposed to what we were currently operating under?
I'm happy to answer that, and I think that residents are already noticing it. So one of the main things that we heard when we came on board under this new structure was that there was no local health director. So the health director was the City of Worcester health director. So, they rarely were able to attend local meetings, the Board of Health meetings. Residents have already seen their regional director at all Board of Health meetings. We've increased community participation, and they'll continue to see that. So seeing the health department represented at the fire department open house. Bridget just today was at Shrewsbury High School at their health fair providing health information. So having that direct interaction with the public through those opportunities. We've also increased the capacity to engage with residents one-on-one via whether phone calls or setting up meetings. That has definitely happened and will continue to happen, and I think will be a big asset for the communities.
Can I just add a couple other things? So if we move forward here, we're also looking to take a more kind of practical approach and strategic approach. So this grant will allow us to, baseline health conditions quantitatively, qualitatively within the community, and then be able to report on them and the progress that we make on it more transparently. So as we move forward, this grant will give us resources to move towards higher, transparency and reporting and the data that we use through the public health. But the local Board of Health will continue to meet. They'll continue to control all local policies. There's 2 buckets of funding associated with how we operate our public health here in Shrewsbury and in the other towns. There's the grant funding, which is a component of it and important, that will help us, move forward and do things that we wouldn't be able to. But there's another local component that isn't subject to the state. It is funding from Shrewsbury and West Boylston and Grafton. So if these funds run out, we still have those local dollars in place, and we're looking to build over time local capacity in case the funding isn't there in the future.
Can I ask another question? I heard some concern around surveillance, so infectious disease and vaccination. That information, where does the town get their information on those things? Because I don't believe our Board of Health is doing that sort of collection, or the health department itself. So where does the information come from?
So the surveillance systems that were mentioned, MAVEN, MIAS, and Metrics, are state surveillance systems that predate the Public Health Excellence Grant. So that information is reported from the state.
So that's like when you go to CVS and you get a vaccine and you check the box to let the state know that you got the vaccine.
Correct, and it's required by state law that anybody providing a vaccine, including your healthcare provider, the pharmacy, school nurses, have to report vaccines through the MIAS database.
And through the chair, if I may. So that's the same as if a flu case, a COVID case, an RSV case, when that's all reported by the doctors or the hospitals. And it trickles down from the state, okay, this is in your community? Is that how that works?
Correct. So that's through the MAVEN system, and again, by state law that predates the Public Health Excellence Grant. Anybody that performs a lab test that finds a positive result for a list of reportable diseases is required to report that through the MAVEN database. It then trickles down to the public health nurse.
So am I correct then that that happens with or without this grant?
Correct.
I think as a follow-up to that, does this grant impose any additional surveillance requirements on the town?
No.
Can I talk a little bit more about the MAVEN system so residents could understand how it really works? So as Ms. Garcia said, if someone tests positive for a communicable disease anywhere in the Commonwealth, it's reported into the local Board of Health, and then we have a public health nurse. So if someone is positive to tuberculosis, very highly communicable disease, our public health nurse engages directly with that case to make sure that they quarantine and follow all public health procedures. So it's really, it's a collection system at the state to help prevent the spread of highly infectious disease. And, you know, if every community uses the same system, then we understand what's happened across the Commonwealth. Without a system like this, even if it was identified by a local Board of Health, there'd be no other way that adjacent communities or other folks or outbreaks could be determined early enough to prevent a broad outbreak.
Mr. Mizikara, I think I'll pose a question to you. It's you know, I'm always, residents have paid into state taxes, so I always want to try to bring those tax dollars back into us to every extent possible. I think we know that it's a limited funding. So walk us through what happens, say, in 2 years, the grant is not available, and we have implemented this structure.
So
How we can, if we wanted to, not fund it through local tax dollars, how we would unwind it.
right, so I think ever since looking back in time, ever since the town of Shrewsbury joined with the city of Worcester to provide a public health service regionally or jointly, 2011, 2010 timeframe, there's always been public health grants that augmented local dollars. Public health is kind of a great opportunity to receive outside funds to augment and implement public health initiatives, and it's something that we always look for. So while the funding value through the Public Health Excellence Grant is great, it's not even as large as some of the grants that the city of Worcester received on behalf of the town of Shrewsbury through like the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and stuff. So first and foremost, we're always going to seek outside funding to augment staff or augment our local dollars. We do think it's important, and we've begun discussions about what are the core services that we need to provide, even if we're unable to expand some of the things towards foundational public health, to make sure that we can provide those core services locally. So that would require an expansion of some local funding starting in the FY27 budget to kind of to bridge the gap. But always with the Public Health Excellence Grant or other sources of funding, we'd be able to be more proactive and engage in more regional activities that will ultimately to benefit residents.
Can I ask a follow-up kind of to that? And just a clarification, because I'm also struggling that a lot of the funding, you mentioned, Ms. Garcia, that we've spent is on what I would say was core functions. You talked about additional inspections, things that we had historically done prior to the grant. I always looked at this IMA as like a two-part process. We had already agreed to join with West Boylston and Grafton prior, and then this was a secondary piece about implementation of a public health excellence grant. So I guess the question is, why would we not, the other strings attached to this grant funding is, why would we not look at what is the funding mechanism for the core services you talked about with the other towns that we would need regardless, because I do want to get into some of these other pieces, because I think it's important for the public to understand that. But just as that question is, why are we not looking at the number of resources required today to execute on those core functions like the inspection services and things we've historically done? That question makes sense, what I'm asking?
It does, yeah. A couple of things come to mind. So we're working on a base budget for fiscal year '26, the year that we're in, that was what was planned under the agreement with the city of Worcester under the former arrangement. So that had incremental costs over FY '25, but we decided under this new arrangement to just carry that forward. So we didn't want to burden the rest of the budget under the caps that we have in total expenditures and increase the public health budget with our local dollars in Shrewsbury greater than 4%. So we stayed within that cap that we have. And incrementally over time, I think I agree with what you're saying, is that we should provide, make sure that we provide those core services through local dollars, which are subject to outside influence as much as a grant would, and I think we're moving in that direction. I don't know if that fully answers your question. I'm happy to go back and
No,
revisit if
I think it does, and I guess
Okay.
I guess fundamentally, I'll just make a few comments here. It's as good a time as any. But when I look at it, and there's nothing to do with anybody in this room. I just think that when you look at the state funding a state budget of $60 billion, I think it's unfortunate the way on the legislature how those dollars are appropriated, because all 351 Massachusetts communities are always struggling with increases in costs. We talk about Prop 2.5 and some of the challenges there, and we're going to be talking about that in the future years here in Shrewsbury. It's unfortunate that dollars that get allocated to these special budgets or these special grants, let's say, for a specific purpose that doesn't always benefit those communities. Where I look at the core functions we're doing are extremely critical to Shrewsbury, the inspection services and all these other things. But to then add on and say, it's not, I would agree, this is not going to improve the individual health of the members of Shrewsbury. The goals we've not established, which I think is kind of backwards. Typically, if you go, let's say, and get money, right? I want to get an investment for anything. I'm going to define what's my return on investment, what are the metrics we're going to measure, how do we know we're being successful? None of that's been done. As was mentioned, we haven't gone out to the public to understand what is their expectation of public health? What does it mean to the residents of Shrewsbury? What are the things that we feel are important? We're essentially putting that second. We're saying, we're going to get there. Because I'm looking at the expenditures outlined here, and we have $77,000 of consultant dollars, where you mentioned the baseline. My concern around the baseline is, how are we going to survey the baseline? We don't even know where we're trying to get. My fear is we're going to be utilizing schools, and we're going to go into the schools, and we're going to have surveys of our school population. And those surveys, we're going to get phone calls, members of this board, based off some of these surveys and the questions we're going to be asking, to develop this, quote, baseline, and then we're going to develop a plan, strategic plan of improving health that is really tied to statewide initiatives or initiatives outside of really this room. So I would prefer that we take the time and focus on delivering these core services before we kind of get ahead of ourselves and say, well, yeah, we'll kind of come up with metrics at some point in the future. Because the other question I have on this budget is, don't we already have inspection software? We're looking, there's $35,000 a year of software. We got $26,000 of furniture in here. It's just, to me, it's unfortunate because of how tight I think dollars are at the local level, that to me, there's a lot of expenses that are tied to this grant that I don't see connected whatsoever. So just the basic improvement of what we want to do in Shrewsbury, like we talked about. Health ideas, dietary pieces, what's the food that we're putting through in our school system, all these other things we could be talking about. And I just think that we haven't done that work first, and we're asking to go ahead and approve something that we really have no idea how we're going to define success.
I think I would argue that we need this structure in order to even consider the things that you outlined. I think that this is, when we talked about how being, under Worcester and how we weren't getting time, attention, value out of that, this is sort of a multi-step process of this intermunicipal approach. And so I think I struggle with, you could argue it doesn't improve public health. I don't think it harms public health. I don't think that there are these strings attached that are going to be a detriment to the residents of this town. And I think it gives us the ability to focus on public health initiatives more broadly. So I guess I'm struggling to, really see a downside.
Well, I think
of
the challenge,
this
just
approach.
if I can make a comment back to your comment, is even on the advisory committee, and I think this was a question and wasn't able to be changed because it had to go back to the state, but the advisory committee consists of members of the boards of health, all of which were appointed. So it's further away from public input. There's nobody on the advisory committee that is, let's say, a member of the community at all. I mean, they're community members because they're on Board of Health, but they are an appointed member of a Board of Health that's serving their Board of Health. So it gets further away from what is the public input. They're making unilateral decisions for our three communities when there hasn't been, I don't see the feedback loop outside of individual boards of health for this joint group from members of the public. That's the challenge that I face there, under the structure.
We would be a voting member of this intermunicipal. I think you might be referring to what might be imposed from the state level down.
Correct.
But what this intermunicipal entity would do on our behalf would not have unilateral control without us having input, correct?
So the advisory board would provide recommendations to the direction, but ultimately the Board of Health would have to decide if they wanted to implement any additional regulations.
Mr. Miskar, do you happen to know how many communities have entered into this type of an agreement so far with the state?
322.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Ms. Garcia, I just want to take a step back and thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work that you've done in this community, and I don't know how many months you've been on board. It feels like a short time.
So, yeah.
4 months, okay. I've seen you out in the community. I've seen just a lot of good work coming from you and the team, and just want to express my gratitude.
Thank you.
I did have a question on, I think there was some concern about being able to withdraw from this program if we were to become a member. I do see in here that it would require a vote from the Select Board and the Board of Health. What happens in the instance if there's a split vote, where one body chooses to vote, to get out and the other one does not? How does that get remedied?
I would have to go back and talk to council.
Do you have any?
I would guess that, probably,
It feels unlikely, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
I don't know. I think Ms. Garcia's response is the best. We could consult with council on that. I would assume that you would need both boards to vote in the affirmative to
Right.
take for action to be effective.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. You noted that 322 communities have entered into this program. I'm wondering, have you received it? Has there already been feedback received from our partnering communities of Grafton and West Boylston on this particular?
So the Grafton Board of Health voted to approve the IMA yesterday. West Boylston's meeting is tomorrow, and then the other select board meetings are next week.
That's helpful. I think that's it for my questions right now. Thank you.
I know there's a lot of skepticism around public health these days. I think that, we're having this conversation on the heels of a resident who came in, and I don't take those comments lightly. I think we are acting in the best interests that we think, we are acting in what we think are the best interests for the community at large, and are not naively trying to put ourselves in a position where we lose local control. It is a balance of what remains in our control and what we can leverage more broadly for funding for us to do what we want to do with regard to public health initiatives. I, in my understanding, don't feel that this has a negative impact on day-to-day residents, nor does it take away their personal rights, at least from, this local entity. What is sort of mandated at a state level is a different issue, but I don't know if there's any other additional comments or questions, or if we should move to.
I'll make one final comment. For me, I think there's a multitude of pieces why I don't support this, but I just think, if I go back to my original comment on grant funding, is that if we continue, let's say as communities, to continue to approve these types of things and buy into this money with strings, we're never going to get to a position in which we have more control over things. And this is an area where I think there is a lot of areas that in the future you're going to see. So when we start to look at, when consultants and other things are coming in, to start looking at developing procedures and doing assessments and so forth and so on, that I think you're going to see a lot more of this pieces that might not be real visible today, because you've seen it in other communities. If you go look at what some of those assessments are like in some of the implementation plans, and I think there are going to be concerns from residents, so I'm going to throw that out there today. So with that, this is just something I don't personally support, only because I would rather have us first fund what the core services are, then define what success means and how we're going to measure it along the way. Just like an insurance company doesn't fund, a treatment plan for mental health unless you show progress. Why would we as taxpayers want to fund something when we have no metrics to know and define success? I just think it's backwards, and I think we have to start pushing back a little bit on these programs, because I just think we're just going to become more and more of these dollars earmarked in grants instead of just more freedom for us as a community to determine where the funding is best fit. So my last comment on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think your perspective on this will depend on your perspective on public health in general, right? And I understand their skepticism. But I think a lot of that stems from the handling of the COVID pandemic, and that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the nuts and bolts of public health. We're talking about inspections for food, health fairs, and emergency response, septic inspections, like things that I believe are the core services of public health. Personally, I believe that public health is meant to serve the most people and do the most good in a community and protect the most vulnerable. And so I do support this. I think that we hear often about finding ways to gain efficiencies through regionalization, and this does that. I think we had great success with the partnership that we had previously with Worcester and other communities, and this is very similar to that, except for that we have the central role in this public health alliance. And so I am in favor of this. And if there aren't any other comments, I can move the motion.
I second that.
I'm good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
Would I be able to get a signature now? Or should I email it to you?
I can take it.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 7 is to review and act on license renewals. So, Staff has reviewed and the submitted 2026 license renewal applications for completeness and compliance with applicable town bylaws, state regulations, departmental recommendations. So this is really our ability to ensure that business owners and license holders have the ability to continue business as of January 1st, 2026. I'm going to ask town staff, we received a list initially, but there are still some that are outstanding in terms of having all of the information. So I believe we have 80, how many? 81 before us that town staff has ensured are complete and are confident in our ability to approve. And it is likely that we will have to come back before the end of the year if the remaining licenses or license owners have submitted all of the required information. Do I have that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. I move to approve the 2026 license renewals as presented for alcohol, common victual, entertainment, Sunday and weekday, bowling alleys, billiard tables, automatic amusements, auto dealers, livery auction, auctioneer, Lord's Day, seasonal dancing, and donation bins.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. I know that it's been a lot of work, so we appreciate the efforts. Item number 8 is to review and act on an amendment to the form of government study committee charge to specify that the 12 to 18-month work period shall begin in November 2025, with the committee's final report due no later than March 2027. And Mr. Garcia represents our board on this study committee. Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I just, I think I have maybe a different agenda. It's been amended.
Oh.
Amended.
Item 8.
Just procedurally, we had to pull the one-day licenses off of the annual license renewals, so we broke those two out.
Oh.
Sorry, when we amended the
Okay, so
agenda.
that was
That was my bad.
more than one amendment. Okay, apologies. Well, we could take it out of order. Agenda item number 10
Okay.
is to review and act on the amendment to the form of government study.
Yes, happy to talk about this. So, the Form of Government Study Committee had their first meeting in November, and so there was some concern from the members about the charge and making sure that we had in there reflected the 12 to 18-month timeline that was set out in the original charge. And so this amendment is seeking to just change to establish the date as November 2025. I think that covers it, but I don't know, Kevin, if you have any additional thoughts.
Sounds very
I-
straightforward to me.
Yeah, very straightforward. I will say, we have had 2 meetings since the start of since the committee's first meeting, and I think we have a very good group. We've set up 2 meetings for January, 2 for February, because we're trying to really make sure that we're doing all the work that we need to do within this 12 to 18th month period. And I think that we recently had a sort of framework presented to us at our last meeting that'll help us work through each of the steps, because it is a big charge that we have to do to do the community engagement, understand first what our current form of government is, and receive feedback and receive information about, maybe some tweaks that we may want to do. So certainly we'll continue to keep the board apprised of the work that the committee's doing, but just wanted to share that with the community.
Appreciate it, thank you.
I move to amend the form of government study committee charge to establish November 2025 as the effective start date for the 12 to 18-month work period, with a final report due to the select board no later than March 2027.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. So apologies for going out of order. Agenda number 8 is to review and act on the one-day all alcohol beverages license application of Rami Shimon St. Mary's Syriac Church for the St. Mary's Syriac Church Christmas party located at 1 Industrial Drive on December 20th, 2025 from 8 p.m. to 11:59 p.m.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And agenda item 9 is to review and act on the one-day all alcohol beverages license application of Rami Shimon, St. Mary Syriac Church for the St. Mary Syriac Church Paris New Year's Eve party located at 1 Industrial Drive on December 31st, 2025, from 8 p.m. to 11:59 p.m.
It's a fun church.
I guess I might
I
have to join
move,
that.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Agenda item number 11 is to review and act to amend the water rules and regulations. We had a robust discussion at our June 10th meeting, and we asked the town manager to work with DPW staff to take our feedback and provide revised proposed regulations. And Water and Sewer Superintendent Tim Maroney is here to give us an update. Good evening.
Good evening. All right, so Tim Maroney, Water and Sewer Superintendent. Purpose of the presentation this evening is to review the memo sent back on October 8th in regards to the update of the water rules and regulations. Division's goal is to offer a significant step forward in how we manage our water system. Since we last met on this, we made some changes, alterations, based on feedback from the board, consultants, and other parties involved in the process of getting this document up to date. For instance, we spelled out what constitutes an emergency and when restrictions can be put in place, making that process easier to understand. It'll also directly tie the regulations to the town's authority under Article 18, Section 4 of the general bylaws, which allows the select board to set and enforce water use restrictions. Overall, the revisions make the document clearer, more consistent, and easier to use moving forward. No, sorry, that was just the title page. So just back to, yep. So just to kind of go back in time, I guess, to June, the current regulations adopted in 2012 were extremely limited and are primarily focused on water line installations, and they lack broader administrative, customer-related provisions. In recent years, we've seen changes in state-level water safety standards and a growing need for utilities to formalize their policies around enforcement and service conditions. Updating our regulations helps ensure that Shrewsbury remains in compliance and responsive to modern expectations from both regulators and residents. And arguably the most important factor in this update ties back to the concerning elevated unaccounted for water levels, which we will dive into in a moment. So going back, the 2012 or current regulations are built around the main focus of water line installations. They covered basics, trenching, piping, meters, inspections. That's about as far as they went. We've had very limited tools for enforcement or addressing issues beyond installations. There's also nothing in them about customer responsibilities, modern compliance requirements, water conservation, or cross-connection control, all of which are now essential parts of running a public water system. This is a big part of why these update is long overdue. So what's new in 25? We're highlighting how the regulations broaden the scope just beyond the technical requirements. We now have formal cross-connection control program, which is a major step toward protecting water quality system-wide. The regulations also lay out clear billing procedures and spell out customer responsibilities, so there's no ambiguity about expectations on either side. And finally, the updates directly support water conservation and bring us into better alignment with state regulatory requirements, which helps ensure long-term compliance and resource sustainability. So what is unaccounted for water, or as we call it, UAW? It's simply the gap between what we pump into the system and what actually gets metered and billed. Some portion is expected in any system. There's Mass DEP sets a 10% benchmark to keep utilities on track. In 2024, this is calendar year, Shrewsbury was at 38%, which is significantly higher than the national standard of 14%. the level of UAW means lost revenue, wasted water, and more stress on the infrastructure. So reducing it has to be a major priority moving forward. And UAW exists as two distinct types: as real losses, which are things that are kind of act of God, if you will, water main breaks, service leaks, and then apparent losses, which is water that is sent out to the system but is not accurately billed. Examples of these would be defective meters or billing errors. Next slide, thanks. So I remember a question I got asked was in June was, what is changing for residents? And I didn't really have I feel like the best answer for that. And thinking about it, I'm like, honestly, for 99.9% of people, nothing is really gonna change. It's gonna not feel different to really most people. Almost everything in the new updated regs kind of reflects practices we already follow day to day. Most of what is changing is behind the scenes, things to improve system safety, efficiency, and overall reliability. So while the document is much more detailed, the average homeowner or business owner won't experience any new burdens or major changes. And finally, a big part about rolling out the updates is making sure customers know what to expect before, if anything happens. We'll be improving our FAQs and updating the website so residents can easily understand the changes and why they're being made. And for accounts that are directly affected, like properties that need a backflow device or those with defective meters, we'll reach out individually and walk them through what's required, answer any questions, and we really want to work with residents, be transparent and treat everyone fairly in this. So that is my update. Questions, feedback?
Thank you, Ms. Maroney. Board members, questions, comments?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Well, I guess the first general, I guess to the board in general, is I remember back in June when we'd had this discussion, we had mentioned, should we go out and get public feedback about, this is a new document. I understand, Mr. Maroney, you're saying it's mostly the same for everyone, but most businesses and residents in the community are on the town water, and so this new policy will affect them. And we had said at the time that once we had a finalized revision, we were gonna go out to the community and allow comments and public feedback prior to approval. So my question is, I guess, why are we not planning on still doing that? Because that was the last time, at least that's how I remember our discussion in June, was we were just waiting on, this time, a red line document and an updated version to go to the community for feedback before we would approve the regulation.
I didn't go back and watch the meeting. I don't remember committing to doing that. I don't know if anyone else recalls that. I think that, I want to be very careful that this is not a situation where I'm saying that resident feedback is irrelevant or not welcome. I think we had a robust discussion. I personally did not have any residents reach out or express comments, concerns, et cetera. And I think that, even based on what has been updated, I'm not sure that getting resident input on existing regulations that are just being better documented would be a reason to do it.
Well, I'm just saying that's what we said. I mean, I
And that's
remember
what-
the conversation was, at the time, I think Mr. Mizikar even indicated it was, we didn't want to send anything out because there was a lot of changes that were going to be made, because this revision was significantly different. A lot of changes were made before this draft was updated that was going to be for public view. And while I agree with you, part of, as far as, is there a huge impact, but it was just something that we said, and I think taking the time to allow people, because they haven't really had anything to look at, so having them give feedback, because we never provided anything besides a dialogue in the prior meeting to look at.
Can I ask, is this basically an internal document that we are reviewing because we are water commissioners?
It is. It sets the parameters on how we operate the water system and provides timelines and expectations that residents can expect from us and obligations that they would have as a water consumer. So it's not a policy document. It's an operational.
It's an operational document, and so I'm trying to think of a time when we have done like a public engagement session on an operational document that's used to operate a utility, I guess, is my question. So while I understand what you're saying, and I do think that there will be some residents who are going to be very interested in this and are going to read through it, I think for most people, they want to know, what does it mean to me? Because they probably don't want to read this whole document. So what does the new meter mean? Can I water my lawn? Can I opt out of the meter? What happens if I don't pay my bill? What do I do if a pipe bursts? Like, I think those are the things that people are most interested in. So I think what you're saying is that these are practices that have been in place. They are now being put down on paper so that they're memorialized, so that if you're not in this role in 5 years, the next person knows what the procedures are and how we operate.
Correct.
I think that, we are residents. We are, our form of government is that we are elected to be the representative of the people in this case, so that they aren't having to go through this with a fine tooth comb. I'm not saying people won't want to, but we're here to look out for the best interests of the community in this case. And so I am comfortable moving forward with this as long as the kinds of concerns that I think you had around what defines an emergency, and I know you had a couple of other concerns in June, are met and answered. I think you're doing a great job of being a watchdog around what the residents might
Well,
be concerned with.
yeah, I do have some specific things to ask about your point. I'm saying more procedurally, it's just that we said we were gonna do it. I don't completely disagree with the fact that there's questions that I've asked that I do want to ask Mr. Maroney, because I provided a lot of feedback and there's still things that haven't been changed and haven't gotten into the document, and I do want to know why. And I will do that, but I do just wanted to go back and say that was the discussion. So if we don't want to do that, obviously I'm just one vote, so I just wanted to throw it out there and say that's what we discussed. But if it's okay, can I ask him my specific questions?
I would
about the
love for
document?
you to ask
Okay.
a specific question.
Okay, Mr. Maroney, the questions I have, and I've provided this feedback a number of times. Some of the things I had concerns about did get addressed, but there's one area that still really bothers me about the document. 2 areas, I should say, and actually Ms. Cassavant had mentioned one of them is about an opt-out policy, but we'll get there second. The first one is still about property access and the way it's written. I don't like it. And I've provided this feedback before, and it's specifically section 2.3, right of access. And the way that it reads is at any time the town deems necessary, access may be required, but not limited to emergency operations, inspecting lines, surveying, sampling water, servicing meters, installing, repairing, replacing devices as deemed necessary by the town. There's no provision in there about notifying the resident that they want access to the property. It just says, if you don't respond to the notification, but my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that if you show up at my door and I say, which I don't even know you're coming, and I say, well, now's not a good time for me, that if in 14-day period, I guess it says, I only have 7 days to respond, and if I don't respond again, you can essentially shut my water off. Where in other parts of the document, it says the town is going to be setting up an appointment. I guess my question to you is, why is it not a reasonable expectation that the town would reach out with an appointment request for a service of a meter?
Well, for service of meter, we definitely would, yeah.
But that's not what it says, and this is my problem,
Okay.
because the way that they're actually written.
But that's what the notification would be.
Well, but that's not clear though, because I know what you're saying, Kevin, but that's not how I read that. Because what it says, at any time the town deems necessary. So if you say it's necessary for me to be there, that's not a notification. That's you showing up at my house. That would be my notification, the way that I'm reading that.
Which part of 2.3 specifically? So
Well, the 2.3, we're right of access,
Yep.
and it says, shall upon presentation, it says, right, property owners on all premises served by the water system shall upon presentation by the town authorize access to their premises by the town, its contractors and agents, you know, and it keeps going. But it says upon presentation by the town, meaning like I can show up whenever I deem necessary. And it goes on in 3.2 for access to meters. All property owners shall grant access to the town personnel or other duly authorized employees to all buildings, premises supplied, service stopping waste for reading, repairing, changing water meters. Notification access will be given specified in 2.3. Well, 2.3 just says at any time the town deemed necessary. Like, you can just show up. I mean, that's how I'm reading that. I don't see any spot that says you have to notify somebody that you're coming. Where in other sections, it says, 5.2.1, cross connection. A town will send written notice to the property owner stating a specific day and time for the site visit. If the specified time is not acceptable, they must call the town to schedule another time. Like, that, to me, is notification, where I'm sending written notice, or email, or phone call, or something. Not just if the guy shows up in my driveway and wants to come check my meter, I don't want him to be there, I start this timeline of, well, you only have 7 days to respond, and after another 7 days, we can shut your water off. What?
No, I'm trying to, what is your primary concern with this, Greg?
My
Do you think
concern
that they're
is
just going to
the
show up and
expectation,
say-
yes, is it
Like,
that you
really
can
think
show
the water
up?
department's just gonna show up and like try to barge into your house? for
Well,
no
I'm
reason?
saying that that's the start of it because I think it's a better reasonable, because according to this is, if I'm signing up for this and you're saying everybody on the water has to abide by it, that would be, I could go back to the document and say, this customer's not allowing me access because I just showed up. It doesn't say I have to give you notification. My concern is, somebody from the water department's gonna show up expecting to go and check something. If somebody doesn't want them there, all of a sudden now on, the time clock starts and says, well, that was my notification, you have to let me back in. It seems more, the way it's written to me seems more, and I'm not saying you're behaving this way, but
Like, would,
more confrontational.
so that happens, you come to my door, you wanna come in, I say no, that's the start of my 7-day
Right,
notice.
and then if I
Like,
don't.
what would you prefer it to be?
I think you're
Like-
trying to want it to be like it says in
I would like to
5
say
whatever,
that
whatever.
somehow there's a written, somehow we should be notifying the customers before showing up that we want to come and service the meter for a reason. There's a note, 521 says, I want to see a written notice or a phone call or a email.
What is the practice, Mr. Maroney? Do you notify residents in advance?
Yeah,
So why don't we just document it that way and says that's what we're doing?
we can definitely do that if that's,
It sounds like Mr. Richards requested that and it wasn't incorporated.
Okay.
Was there a reason it wasn't incorporated?
I
If
don't.
that is the practice and it's not a change, let's add it in.
Okay.
So
Just because I think I'm more comfortable that says that's what we're going to do.
is this, I'm reading this as understanding like, you know, the only time that scenario might occur is in an emergency situation, right? Like, so you're not gonna come to read a meter or do like standard
No,
practices.
most, I mean, the meters we can read from outside, we only have to go in the house most of the time.
So it says here, you know, it includes, but is not limited to emergency operations. So I think maybe separating out like an emergency situation where there may not be time for notice, right? Is there times where you'd have to access somebody's property, without being able to provide notice? So just defining, you know, the difference between when there's emergency access is needed and what that process is, you know, knocking on the door if there's an emergency, you know, is the start of that 7-day clock, or if it's non-emergency access is needed, having, you know, providing some type of written or, you know, other form of communication ahead of time. Is that right? Like, would that cover it? Is that?
Yeah, well, I know what you're saying, but then my problem is in 3.2, just about access to meters, where it's just about only for reading. It even says reading, repairing, or changing. So even reading a meter for whatever reason goes back to the same 2.3 definition. So I'm okay if it splits it out and says an emergency situation, this would be how we behave. But if if we're already doing the notification, I'd rather have it documented that way. So that, like I always say, you get hit by a bus, something happens, and how do we operate? And somebody goes, well, we just show up according to this, and they have to let us in.
I understand, yep.
Because I think
That's
there's a
not-
privacy piece for me, that I think people have concerns about privacy and
Yeah,
having the expectation of, if we're doing it, to your point.
I,
Go ahead.
I just want to say, under all circumstances, when dealing with the water, we never barge into someone's house. And I understand the concern and I understand the lack of trust, but how we practice is to provide notice, except for if there's an emergency. And we do need to preserve our rights to access properties when we need to.
But can we document
Yeah,
the notification?
I think
I understand what
I
you're
think
saying.
we've got that.
100%.
I
Yeah.
think, can we move on from that? I think we agree.
Okay.
I think that it does not prohibit you from having to respond in an emergency situation. Am I
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
And I don't disagree. I feel like we're creating this narrative that, you know, there's a sinister intent here, and there's not. So I'd rather just take it off the table now that it's been discussed, to provide notice that we consider reasonable for us to continue to provide a utility service, a critical utility service to the residents. We don't want to bother them unless there's
We don't want to bother
a
them.
need to them. So I think I just want to make sure that that is the spirit under which we're operating. Mr. Richards, do you have any other? You said you had several.
It was just the second piece was, I think there was a comment, I think Ms. Cassavant alluded to it, correct if I'm wrong, it was about an opt-out, because we were talking about going to AMI and the smart meter side of things, and there are, residents or concerns about that, and there are other, National Grid, Eversource, there's two pieces of legislation at the State House talking about opt-out provisions for smart meters and AMI. Concord, Littleton, who have municipal light, also have a provision. When I asked about it, I think the feedback was, well, let's just wait and see. But my point is, now is the perfect time before creating a regulation to build in some type of provision for an opt-out. So I guess my question is there any reason why we haven't thought about that, or why there isn't an opt-out when pretty much a lot of utilities have that provision today?
Yeah, so we're kind of just, we're piggybacking off with Selco, the same, they don't have an opt-out, so we're gonna just we'll follow suit with Selco, because we're using their network. And I think we're not there yet with the AMI network, so we didn't feel the need to put it in the regs right away. Just because we're still very premature in the pilot portion of this. And I wouldn't want to put it in and then have that not be the case, and then if we do have to go that route, then if there is legislation, which I think went to the House on last Thursday, I believe, the 4th. Obviously, if the state is telling us we have to do offer an opt-out, then we definitely would adhere to state law.
So is there any plans, say that the legislation at the state doesn't pass, is there any plan to offer an opt-out program?
At this time, no.
Is there a reason for that?
I think it would be staffing concerns. I don't know what if 10% of the people decide. I know that number high. It's a high number, but if 10% opt out, then I don't have the manpower to go read individual meters once a month, because that's what we're going to be going to, once a month reading. So I think that's our main concern, the staffing issue.
Okay, but my understanding is a lot of those opt-out provisions have tiers associated with them, where there is like, number one, okay, you completely don't have the meter. Number two, and I don't know what the plan is, and we don't have to talk about this today because we're not here to talk about how you're implementing the AMI meter program. That could be a different day. You can come back and talk to us about it.
Sure, we will.
But, how often are they transmitting? And is there a way to do it just once a month for billing only? And then there's different, let's say, costs associated with that. But, I'd like to see, and I think there's members of the community that would like to see, because a lot of, like I say, the utility side do have that provision for residents. understanding a little bit more about what would those costs be to offer that provision, and looking at towns like a Concord, like a Littleton, who are similar in municipal light. What are the opt-out rates they're seeing? What are the costs associated with it? I don't know if that's something that we could look at.
Yeah.
But I think that would be good information to have, because I know there's probably members of the community who'd be very interested in that.
Sure.
Okay, that's.
Any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, while you looked away. I did have a question under 2.6. Well, actually, first, Mr. Maroney, similar to Ms. Garcia, just want to thank you for all the work that you do. Public service is challenging, and there's a lot of concerns and questions, but you and the team do great work, and just, again, want to express my gratitude for that.
Appreciate it.
Under 2.6,
Yep.
I appreciate and understand that I think this is similar, the liability for the town, that the town is not responsible for any damages or anything that may occur if there's a service interruption, correct? I guess in here, you urge the policy, this document urges the community to install safety devices and other things. Is there a way for residents or property owners to, I guess, understand what those safety devices may be, or figure out, which things to buy, or what protections would adequately, make sure that their system is okay?
I mean, we don't have like a formal document, but people will call and we'll give them, ideas on what to do. We try not to give too much on, some people call and ask about like in-home filters, and we don't usually. But yeah, we don't have like a formal, that's something we could definitely develop though.
Can I follow-up question or comment? So I know the plumbing code requires the most critical life safety check valves and pressure relief valves within your home on the most critical systems, like a hot water tank and a boiler and things like that. I think that is the primary reference associated with this. That's my understanding. Mr. Maroney, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think those are the most critical safety things are within appliances, but when you're thinking about appliances in the context of our water customers, it could be a large commercial customer with a large boiler.
Yep.
and a vacuum issue if water draws down and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. I guess I was thinking about, if there is a service interruption that does damage any part of the system, I think as a property owner, I would be upset if I had to make that cost. And
Understandable.
it wasn't
And again,
my fault.
we work with people all the time on stuff like this.
Oh, okay.
If we're
That's good
hydro
to know.
flushing or something and someone's got the laundry going, they didn't get the message or something. We work with
Yeah.
people to try to make things right, so.
Okay. That's helpful. And I think that covers it for my questions, so thank you, Madam Chair.
So, I'm gonna move that we approve the water rules and regulations with the addition of the edit to the language around notice.
Okay.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Well,
Aye.
Oh, go ahead,
Sorry.
sorry.
I don't know, personally, I'd just like to see the language of what that's gonna look like, but. I don't know how that would work, how you define the motion to say, like, because what if the language doesn't come back that's acceptable? I don't know, I've never done this, like, this.
Well, I mean,
type
we
of
just had a
motion.
really robust discussion.
Yeah.
I have faith that Mr. Maroney is going to be able
Yep.
to insert language from 5 point whatever
Yep.
into 2.3 to bring it to the standard that you were asking for. So I'm comfortable moving forward and voting on this.
We will certainly share it with the board, and if our proposal doesn't work, we'll bring them back.
Okay,
After that.
fair enough. Good.
Call the vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 12 is to review and discuss the warrant article, I'm sorry, Mr. Murney, thank you.
That's-
Sorry. So anxious to move on to the next thing that I forgot to thank you. I really
No
appreciate your
worries,
time
thank
and
you.
effort. Thank you. Item number 12 is to review and discuss the warrant article for the December 17th, 2025 special town meeting and vote on our recommendation. There's one article for a zoning bylaw amendment to establish a moratorium for up to 24 months on mixed-use development in the Lakeway and Route 20 overlay districts. This board brought this article forward in direct response to resident concerns regarding the pace of recent development. We want to carefully evaluate our infrastructure capacity and land use regulations and ensure zoning is aligned with the community's long-term vision. This moratorium provides a defined pause to enable us to complete this work in a responsible way. We have been discussing this for several months and have been in agreement on the approach. Are there any board members that want to make any additional comments this evening?
I have one, Madam Chair. Appreciate you outlining it. We have talked about it for quite some time. I just want to encourage town meeting members and residents who are watching this to continue to be involved in the process. It's a 2-year moratorium where we're going to do study and community engagement, so just want to make sure that our town meeting members are continuing to be involved, continuing to, get the outreach out there into the community so that we can have as robust of a community engagement process as possible.
I just want to note too that along with this, the reason the timing of this now makes sense is because we are approaching the 10% affordable threshold under Chapter 40B. And so I think that it's important to recognize that the mixed use overlay has helped us to revitalize parcels that were underutilized, such as where Market Basket is and where Whole Foods is, and also, allowing us to get closer to that 40B. As part of our ongoing work as a board was to meet that 40B requirement to reach safe harbor. And I think that because we've gotten there, that helps make this seem like the right time to pause, right? Because we're not saying, we know that we've increased the housing stock to a place where we can say, okay, this isn't going to have a detrimental effect on people being able to find housing in the community. It's going to give us an opportunity to step back and make sure that our remaining commercial properties are protected, and then take a look at infrastructure to make sure that corridors can handle the kind of growth that we've been seeing. So I think the timing of this is really good.
Yeah, I'll just make a couple of brief comments. I think this is really all about meeting the expectations of the residents of Shrewsbury. I think there's expectations on how properties would be used, and I think the other really good part about this article and this dialogue is zoning is complicated and confusing, and I think there's a lot of expectations, like I said, that are misaligned as far as what some residents believe can be built in certain areas, what can't be built, or why is certain things going certain places. So I think this dialogue and this process that we're going to go through during the pause, as we have a time to dig into this in more detail, we're ultimately going to end up with, I believe, our zoning bylaws cleaned up and clarified so that a lot of residents in our community are going to have a much better understanding of really what they mean, what can be done where, and it's going to give us, I think, a much better opportunity to ensure that that remaining commercial property is best utilized for what we've talked about for so long in this community. And I'm really kind of looking forward to the discussion, I think, on the 17th. So.
Great. All right. Entertain a motion to recommend Article 1.
I move that the select board vote to recommend passage of Article 1 at the December 17th, 2025 special town meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 13 is to review and act on MVP 2.0 2026 letter of commitment. This is required for eligibility in the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Action Grant Program.
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
Oh, sorry. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 14 is to review and discuss select board meeting schedule for January of 2026 through June of 2026. This follows our standard schedule of 7 PM on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Item number 15 is to review an act to reappoint one member to the Westboro Treatment Plant Board Treasurer to serve a 3-year term set to expire on September 30th, 2028. Mr. Francis Holloway has expressed willingness to continue in this role, and staff has recommended reappointment for the upcoming 3-year term ending September 30th, 2028. We did post this, and we did not receive any other applicants.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 16 is to review an act to reappoint one member to the Scholarship Committee to serve a 3-year term set to expire on June 30th, 2028. Mr. James Pignataro has expressed willingness to continue in this role. We did post it, and there were not any other applicants.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And item number 17 is to review an act to appoint one associate member to the Zoning Board of Appeals to serve a 1-year term set to expire on March 31st, 2026. Siobhan Costello-Weber recently applied for the ZBA and received the vote of several board members, so we asked town staff to approach her for this opportunity, and she expressed willingness to serve.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Move on to correspondence. Item number 18 is an email dated September 1st, 2025 from Julie Boris, 6 Catalina Drive, regarding public health enforcement practices, and we heard from Ms. Boris earlier this evening, so noted. That is the end of our, I think that's the end of our agenda, right? I should
Yes, it
double,
is.
triple check. So if there's not anything else to come before the board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Have a good evening. Thank you.